You're going to talk about how alarmingly thin Ariana looked at her first tour show. I have touched on this topic, and my takeaway is whatever is happening, which seemingly is an eating disorder, but I guess I'm not going to assume something to be true, but Ariana's weight is very concerning, is what I will say. And so, yeah, that's the takeaway.
Took home his third.
Okay, last thing though is that now what happens is like it's okay, y'all. Okay. So unfortunately, in trying to not have another Chadwick Boseman moment, and also trying to, I think, be more aware in how we talk about women's bodies. Now, what's happening is in this current era where, once again, there are alarmingly thin bodies being pushed as the standard in Hollywood. We have totally moved on from the body positivity movement. We're like, not doing that anymore. And we are now back in this era of very, very thin bodies being the standard. And that is something that we can't ignore, but it also requires sensitivity because of the problem of always talking about women's bodies and creating these standards that are impossible to achieve. But a lot of Ariana Grande fans are like, don't say anything because you're doing the thing where you are assuming and you never know if it's. So I'm just saying it's a health condition either way. And I understand there are people like Erin Moriarty who was going through an autoimmune issue and didn't know what was happening there. But then there's also people like Karen Carpenter who died from anorexia, and nobody did what was needed to get her the help that she required. So this is one of those topics that I get the requirement of nuance and sensitivity. And there is a difference between addressing something that is a prevalent issue in our society, but also not doing so from a way that is mocking, that is like being, contributing to creating impossible standards for women and always talking about like women just cannot exist without being scrutinized. And so I would hope that people recognize the difference there. And I think what we're seeing again in Hollywood with this trend of very, very, very thin bodies is concerning because we have been here before. It's not that this ever really went away, but for a moment there, we had conversations around thinness and, standards that are pushed by an industry like Hollywood. And now it feels like we can't have these conversations because it's also that stans are using that as an excuse to not have their faves, like potential health problems here, which an eating disorder is a health problem. I am not going to state with 100% certainty what is the case, but stans will use that to push away any conversation. Thank you, Caroline. I'm very self-conscious of my weight with my health currently. I've been trying since February to get out of the 90s, but I'm still maintained, which is both good and bad. And I understand that not every person who has a thin body is that is the case because they have an eating disorder. I get that people have naturally thin bodies, that they struggle to gain weight, et cetera, et cetera. But when we talk about an industry like Hollywood, where people are subjected to the most impossible of standards, it does produce concerning behaviors. Like, I have been in this industry. I know the pressures. I am considered fat. Like I am considered fat in Hollywood. I have been told to my face that I am a big girl in Hollywood. I know what it's like. And I'm not even an A-lister. I'm not even somebody who is all over the magazines and my weight being talked about. But I'm trying to say, like, this is the reality of Hollywood. So this idea that celebrities, especially celebrity women, are not once again turning to this trend of very scarily thin bodies is kind of, it's ridiculous to like pretend that that's not the case. So I am not putting the blame on individuals. However, we need to acknowledge people who are in a position of influence. So when you are in a position of influence and you have young fans, like I remember how many times have we had these conversations about growing up in the 2000s, seeing really, really thin bodies being promoted to us as what we should all look like. Like that is what is normalized, but also that is a result of these societal standards and the constant scrutinization on women. Like women can just never be good enough, never good enough. You know, it's like, I get too that when they do lose weight, when they are thin, then they're still being discussed. As an Ariana fan since 2011, we all know she's been struggling with eating her entire adult life. People suddenly acting like it's outrageous to assume she's anorexic is incredibly disingenuous to me. A lot of the signs are there. Okay. A lot of the signs are there. Posting, dinner heart with just cucumbers and, a handful of cucumbers and a couple strawberries. Like any of us who have had an eating disorder or who know people of eating disorder or who have just are aware of disordered eating and how prevalent it is in our society, you recognize what's going on, but also are cognizant of not wanting to contribute in a worse way. Because one thing with disordered eating is that saying things like that person looks like a skeleton, they look like they're dying. Disordered eating is such a mind fuck that somebody who is struggling with an eating disorder will take that as reinforcement for what they are doing, that it is something that motivates them, because that's not something that is going to make them go, oh, that's concerning. Oop, I need to do something here. That's achieving what they are seeking to do because it is a form of control. Anyway, sorry. It's one of these conversations that no matter how you try and address it and to be aware of all the things and take that into account and have a nuanced discussion here, you're still going to be hit with the you're doing the thing. You're talking about women's bodies. Oh, you're doing the thing. You're assuming. You never know if she's sick. I'm like, here's the thing. That's why I'm saying whatever is happening here. And for years, signs have pointed to her having an eating disorder, which is not unusual for being in this industry. So many people have an eating. Now men, like the way that men's bodies are the standard of 0% body fat. So you used to have men's bodies that were considered like the quintessential action, kind of leading man type body. And now they are subjected to this incredibly ridiculous, impossible to achieve standard. So yeah, you look at Bruce Willis in Die Hard in the 80s, and then you look at you look at actors who are character actors and they have 0% body fat now. Every guy is taking performance enhancing drugs, testosterone, anti-balding medication, Viagra, etc. Yeah, all the Marvel guys, that is part of the Marvelification of Hollywood. That is one aspect of it. I didn't know that about anorexia, that calling out the person paradoxically encourages the behavior because it's a type of positive reinforcement of the condition. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Eating disorders are they're a real bitch. They are a monster that, unless you have been in the throes of one or you have experienced people close to you who have struggled with eating disorders. I mean, to a degree, many of us have an unhealthy relationship with food and our bodies, have some form of disordered eating, even if it's not like, even if it doesn't fall under the definition of an eating disorder. But it's all the like, oh my God, you look so skinny, even something like that, and the reinforcement from that. And it doesn't matter how you've gotten skinny. It's the reinforcement from somebody acknowledging that. It's very complicated because it doesn't take much to trigger you. Right. When you're in your 40s, that cycle of binge and gain really fucks up your body. I'm just now getting into a better cycle of losing 2 pounds a month. But that doesn't stop me from hating how I look, even though my wife prefers the dad bod. Yeah, and it's something that you can find yourself in the throes of without really having even meant to without even having meant it. And yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot in this conversation, but the reality is that beauty standards and just how much more impossible they have become to attain because of social media, because of plastic surgery and fillers and Botox and Facetune and AI now, that that hasn't gone away. Also, not so fun fact, 8 out of 10 female K-pop trainees stop menstruating due to extreme dieting. Yes, they force K-pop stars to have eating disorders. Like, you are not allowed to have agency over your body whatsoever. They practically make you in a lab, and you have to fit certain measurements as a K-pop star. Yeah, it's terrible. Fable Gray. Fable Gray, thank you for the 43 months. Lemonade Turd, thank you for the 2 months. Are the Knicks up? See, told you. There's lots of game left. Knicks game. Let's see. 52-50. Quarter 2. Okay, they've closed the gap. All right. So anyway, that's my jumble of thoughts on that. It is frankly a topic that I hate having to talk about. As I said, no matter how you try and approach with such care and not approach from kind of judgmental and like not actually true concern, but performative concern, people will still get upset. And people also, I think, confuse, I think they confuse, they confuse like the way to approach this conversation and have resulted in this concluding that like there's just like you should not talk about it at all. Of course people want to hate. Yes. Of course.